Does it feel like when you go into a parenting group, they're simultaneously telling you to have high expectations of your children, and yet your expectations are too high? Well, that's what I'd like to cover today. Are there really bad expectations? Are our expectations too high? Are they too low? And how can we know? So welcome, I am Mary Peterson Cook of Mary Peterson Cook Ventures, and I help parents just like yourself with parenting and homeschooling from connection. While I was scrolling through my Facebook feed this week, I saw a post of a mom asking, is it too much to expect my child, her 7-year-old child, to have 1 hour of quiet time in her room so that she can rest? I was a homeschooling mom, and she just wanted 1 hour all to herself. Was that too much to ask? And there was a range. There's a range of some good, some not so good reactions to her posts, ranging from you're the mom, you're the boss, spank her and put her in a room, to that's way too much to expect of her. You can just go and do it yourself, and so on. The other part of this was the mom doesn't want to use screen time. And I find that people have huge reactions one way or the other when it comes to what we expect of our kids. And I really wanted to talk about this because how do we know if our expectations are not even just good or bad, but realistic? So question 1, are there good and bad expectations? Typically, no. An expectation is just that. Outside of some more extreme scenarios in the typical home life, there's no such thing as a good or bad expectation. There are, however, unrealistic expectations and realistic expectations. And honestly, that can change depending on the day, depending on the hour. We all know how sometimes we just are not having good days, right? Our kids will have not so good days as well, where sometimes we have to drop expectations. But in a typical day-to-day scenario, how do we know what is a realistic expectation and what is not realistic? And do we need to just drop all our expectations? So I wanted to take the scenario of this poor mom who is completely overstimulated and does need some quiet time to herself. So question 1, is that okay? Should she be able to expect to get an hour of quiet time for herself to rest and recharge and renew? Of course she should be able to have an hour to herself. There's no doubt in my mind that a lot of our parenting issues and our frustrations can go away if we could just have some time to regroup. Especially for my ADHD mamas and my ASD mamas, we get completely overstimulated and we need some quiet time to regroup. Introverts, same thing. You can't be go, go, go on all the time without some kind of nervous system meltdown, right? So it is completely okay that she wants to have time to herself. The question then becomes, is this a realistic expectation for my child? And I'm not talking age here, because there are 4-year-olds that could do this just fine, and then there are 12-year-olds who would never be able to do this. So it's not about the age, it's about your specific child. And if it is unrealistic, which her child is showing her child is having meltdowns, crying, feeling completely alone and abandoned. That's how she's feeling, right? And we shouldn't be like, well, she shouldn't. She should just get over it. She knows her mom needs time. That's where a lot of people go with this. But we can see our child is not doing okay with this current expectation. It doesn't mean throw the expectation away. That's not what it means. It just means we have to accept our child where they are and then figure out how to help them meet the expectation. How can we scaffold our guidance to be able to eventually meet this expectation? So there's a few options for this mom. 1, don't restrain your kid to their room. You don't want it to feel like a punishment. You're not trying to push them away. It's very similar to when we are really frustrated and we need to walk away, We're not telling our children to go away, because then that is a punishment and not a boundary. We are going to go walk away to calm ourselves down. We are taking responsibility for our own personal reactions and needs, and we are not expecting others to change what they are doing for us. So in this case, mom should go to her bedroom for some quiet time and say that this is what she needs. That's step 1. Step 2, how do we get the child to the point where they can go a whole hour without mom when they're obviously not at that point yet? It doesn't matter whether they quote unquote should be by 7 years old, because they're not. You can should the poor mom all day long and make her feel guilty like she failed in some way, but it's just not true. It's just not to that point yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. She's going to get to that point. So how do we get there? Well, for one, we have a talk with our 7-year-old, our 8-year-old, whatever age the kid is. And we say, hey, mommy needs this. And I also feel like you need this quiet time. But I've noticed that it's been a struggle for you. So what's up? And let them talk to you about the things that are coming up for them. What feelings, what thoughts, what struggles they're having. And then you can repeat all of that. Use active listening. And then explain what your need is. I totally hear that. Can I tell you what my needs are? What my concerns are? And go through that. And then problem solve together. How can you meet both of those needs? Some kids are receptive to this. Some kids need a lot of practice to get to that point. So go ahead and make some suggestions after a little bit of them trying. But typically, just start small. That is the easiest way. Be like, hey, I'm going to go in my bedroom for 10 minutes. What are you going to do for the next 10 minutes while I go reset? And then build up from there. For me, I have a very clingy son who hates being alone. He is a social butterfly, an only child, hates being alone. So we've had to start small. Be like, I need 5 minutes. And then grow it to, I need 10 minutes. We can pretty much get to about 20 to 30 minutes. I hope this has helped. Just to refresh, there are no bad expectations in the general sense of parenting. And you don't have to let go of all of your expectations just because your child is showing you they're not ready for them yet. What you do is you take a step back and you figure out where your child is, where you want them to go, and how you can build in support for them and little mini milestones to meet this goal eventually. It could take a week. It could take a year. Doesn't really matter what the timeline is as much as you are helping them figure out the path to go from A to B. You're building a roadmap for them, or better yet, with them. Having those conversations if they're old enough that they can be a part of the problem-solving solution. And then at the end of the day, remembering, in this case especially, you're not trying to change your children to meet your needs. You are trying to take responsibility for yourself to meet your needs. I hope that makes sense. Please leave some comments below if you have any questions, and have a great week.